Hey everybody, how you doing? All right, so we're heading into essentially our final week here, which is pretty incredible. And I have already, I'm again taping this on Thursday, so I say yesterday. I mean, you're gonna see this on Friday, so I posted on Thursday. The last two things that are being assigned, and it is actually the major assignment. Don't forget, by the way, that the last two assignments count more than the others. So we have the feature assignment that's due on Friday, which seeing today. And then, of course, the major assignment, which will be due a week from today. I considered actually making it a little bit. I want to do it before the July 4th weekend, even though July 3rd might be a day off for a lot of people. Um, what the major assignment's going to be essentially is just basically just kind of almost like a summation or kind of like a cumulative work of what we've been doing all semester. And that is just taking like information, putting it together into a cohesive piece, and then also at the same time do what we similar to what we did with Megalomania. The Megalomania sign and that is actually get additional information to help balance out the story. Um, so anyway, the big difference though is that this story will be more project oriented. And sometimes you do a project oriented story, you have to like, actually work on it in advance as opposed to now. Usually I would give like more time on a project oriented story, but that's not the way it's worked this year. So anyway, you have a week to actually essentially put together this story. It's going to be about the condition of housing at Rutgers University, and but only this time you're going to actually have the quotes with you ahead of time, and I'll show you exactly what I mean in a bit. So let's see what we got. Um, let's see what we got that's due. Split the screen here. All right. So, um, just going through things here. Okay, sorry. All right. So this I already posted, so I can actually go into the student view. Show by type. So here we are. We have the fifth assignment again, which is the rewrite of that. You check the discussion points. Um, we actually have had good participation. Be better if we had a little better, but 11 we had. Remember to take this information, only this information for this story from here, this discussion point. Thank you, Ionis, Bradley. Again, the whole idea here is to kind of take what is here and turn it into a feature story with essentially an anecdotal lead that will give the top of the story more of an engaging feel, make it give the reader the feeling that like this is actually a story that actually wants they want you to take time to read, as opposed to something where you just kind of read the lead and you're in and out and you're gone. Okay, this is a story again that's for Sundays, for stories that are for like longer periods of time, for longer train rides, that sort of thing. Okay, so I mean, we got Samantha talking about I've been working 40 hours a week, a local restaurant and pizza. This entails standing for hours, so, blah, blah, blah. And then, endless cloudless sky days only make the shifts unbearable. Frequent 90-degree days. Where air conditioning is broken in your car. I mean, that sounds like maybe the perfect anecdotes that could either lead the story or maybe serve as part of the body. So thank you, Samantha. All right, so let's go back to where we were. So yes, so that's there. And please, it's still time that you can still contribute to it. Still time to do that. Don't forget class participation is involved. We have the again, so here's the rewrite. The rewrite for the feature assignment is due exactly the same day as the major assignment, July 3rd. Now, again, if you go back to the modules where we have the um sorry where we have the rubric, which I posted in the first week module. Again, the whole idea here, and I've seen this actually I've seen this progress. I've seen this is why I feel like this grading system works because I feel as though people have made tremendous strides from beginning to end. I feel there are people who have been maybe consistently at A level. There are people, but there have also been people who maybe started like C level, maybe even at R level, and then have moved into A level and consistently. So that is great. Um, So anyway, you might remember that, okay, this is how the grading works. Okay, so again, 30% is again the class participation, okay? Um, and that will essentially be, and again, that's in the syllabus and everything too. That's basically, again, the participation discussion points. But also I take into account like making sure that you're participating in assignments and things like that. If you're having this trouble and you reach out to me, I consider that as a bonus as well. Okay. Um, Now here's assignments, and this actually turned out exactly what I expected it to be. Um, the first assignment was the profile story you did on somebody you know. That was 10% of this is your writing grade, by the way, which is 70% of your total grade. So 10% of that writing grade was that. And then the work leads worksheet assignment, which wasn't all that long ago, but it's there. That was 10% of your grade, your writing grade. Okay. And the third assignment, which was actually just one, and you should have all gotten back your it's amazing how compartmentalized and condensed this semester is in the summer. But the uh the AI student reaction story was the third assignment. I really like the rewrites that were done for that. There were only six of them, so that was good. They're all good. Then of course the Megalomania assignment, 10%. I addressed that in last week's, or sorry, the last lecture, and I felt like I needed maybe to see a little bit better of that. So let's hope that we do well on that rewrite. And actually, I forgot to leave. I left that out too. And as that rewrite is due on Friday as well. Okay, so um, okay, now so these count as like essentially like one assignment. Then suddenly this fifth assignment, which is the feature assignment, counts twice as much as one of these. Okay, so that's the whole idea being that you've kind of reached a level where you've developed done a good job of reporting things, coming up with ideas, coming up with things to write about, developing stories, that sort of thing, and also maybe taking it to a new level where you have like a lead that actually is more engaging. So that's why that counts more. And again, I've seen the way things have trended and people have done well. Okay. Now this major assignment again is like much it's kind of similar to the feature assignment in a way, but in this case, actually, it's gonna involve maybe a little bit more work. And because it's actually one of the big things is it's twice as long. It's gonna have to be twice as long as the previous assignments. You're gonna have to do something that basically probably incorporates the what we did with the AI reaction story as well as the feature story, and that is develop anecdotes, an in-depth story, and also reach out to somebody outside to provide some sort of balance outside of what you know is the is essentially is the you're going to basically use like student reaction for this story as well, but you're going to provide some sort of reaction from another person on top of the students to help balance out the story. Okay. And I'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. All right. So all right, so here's our assignments and what's due again. Okay, so you have the major assignment, which is due on July 3rd, and the rewrite of the feature assignment. And I'm sorry, I left this out before. This is also due as well, and that is the feature assignment, which is due on Friday. And of course, the rewrite, the Megalomania assignment, which is also due on Friday. So a lot going on. All right, so what is the major assignment? Okay. So for this assignment, you'll write an in-depth topic for a major assignment. The idea is reports to be self-managed, so you have to think of develop stories on your own. So actually, this is actually now again, I should say that when I say ideas on your own, I'm thinking about the ideas within the story itself. This is actually an assigned story that I'm giving you. And I have to admit that in the past, I've actually done this very much more loosely. I've done this as a story where I've actually asked people to propose ideas and do it on their own. And I had a wave of AI last year, so I cannot do that anymore. So instead, What I'm asking you to do is to focus on a specific topic and take the information from here. Okay. And this is actually an attachment within the assignment itself. And I'm sorry, this thing has actually decided to move down here and I didn't want it to. Okay. So I just clicked on this right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to write you're going to write a story about the on-campus and off-campus housing situation at Rutgers. Only you're going to take the information. I'm not asking for a discussion point this time. I'm asking for you to actually like take information that's essentially been handed to you, okay, and actually turn that into a story, but not just a 500 to 800 word story, but an 800 to 1100 word story. There's plenty of people here to talk or to use here, information here. Yes, because of the amount of time that we have, I'm taking out the interview portion of it and asking you to just develop a story out of what's here. Okay. There are actually a lot of anecdotes in here, and the same thing we've been just did with the. You don't have to write it's up to you whether what kind of lead you want to write. You want to write an anecdotal lead, that's fine. You want to write a straight lead, that's fine. That's totally up to you. Okay, but there are plenty of people here. This is actually from a previous year, so these are actually real opinions people had. Okay. It's all in this Microsoft Word doc. Okay. Come up with essentially a consensus lead and develop that into a story. Okay. Much like we did with the AI reaction story, and essentially we're doing with the weather story. Okay. Please keep it simple, although you'll be required to dig a little deeper since the word length is twice as long as a typical assignment. That means more transitions, more anecdotes, and perhaps a few more indirect quotes to humanize the story. Okay. Um, so you're just going to basically do what we've been doing already with the AI reaction story and also again, the feature story and just double it essentially. Okay. However, here's the thing that like I want to make sure that I incorporated into this, and that is, when we've done these stories and that sort of thing, we have one thing that we haven't really kind of addressed essentially is balanced stories. Now, I've said the three main tenets are accuracy, clarity, and focus. And I've also said that basically that the journalist should always seek the most attainable version of the truth. Well, in order to seek like the best accuracy you can get, in order to get like essentially something that's fair, something that's I don't want to say fair and balanced, but clear and focused, but largely accurate, and also seeking the most attainable version of the truth is getting like multiple sources to a story. Now we're doing that essentially by getting like reaction. We have essentially in front of us like 9, 10 students essentially providing reaction how they feel about the housing situation of Rutgers. But you might remember back when I showed you that video of the terrible tragedy that happened in 1988 with the student that died. They from a drinking death. They actually interviewed people on the street, and the theme was to get actually like reaction from Rutgers University students, um, and basically like try to like essentially get some sort of consensus opinion on how some sort of take the temperature of how students are reacting to this whole situation. But what they also did was to try to balance out the story. In order to achieve like the most obtainable version of the truth, it's also important to provide balance. So it's also important to provide maybe like some reaction from the people who may be being criticized. Okay, to provide some sort of balance, as I keep saying. So what I'm going to ask you to do is actually, and this is a new thing that I'm doing. So actually asking. This is not something that's going to be printed or anything like that. But I'm asking you to reach out to this person. Now, this person does not actually have anything to do with housing, but I thought this is a person I know very well. She's actually my niece, and she works in this is her title. She's a postdoctoral associate. She's going to act essentially as almost like the Rutgers spokesperson for this story. So you're actually going to ask a question and get reaction from somebody from the university to react to what the students are saying. That provides balance. It's also important so that the story is not just like projecting one point of view. Okay. Now, again, the whole idea with like getting multiple students, you're not necessarily projecting one point of view, but it's also important to get people who are maybe being criticized or that sort of thing. Or maybe not only that, but maybe like have a chance to kind of respond to any kind of comment at all about what they may be presiding over. So, and this is actually a comment that goes maybe toward the bottom of the story. So to present a balanced story, and this is something that goes toward the bottom of the story. So you're going to have a story that essentially is, and what I should do actually is I should do this. I should actually, let me just go back to this. Um, okay. All right. So you're going to have essentially this. You're going to have, sorry about that. Okay. You are going to have, brother. Okay. Here we go. Again, a story about like that leads about the students. Maybe students have a mixed reaction. Let's say they have a mixed reaction to this, to the way housing is handled on campus. So how these stories are typically done is actually not the typically way we've done like with the weather sort of thing. We try to provide again some alternative point of view. So you have maybe like essentially like a transition, and essentially like brings in one point of view. Oops, transition. First point of view that reflects what the lead is trying to say. Okay. And then you have an anecdote. Okay. And then maybe like a direct quote. Okay. And then like another transition. And then an anecdote and a quote. And then there's probably like about maybe, since this is a longer story, maybe it's good to have like maybe 6 transitions overall. Once you get through those 6 transitions, anecdotes, and quotes, um, now I realize that maybe like the idea here is that um why put in essentially like an alternative opinion or a reaction opinion at the bottom of the story because maybe most people won't read to it. But that's because this story is about the students' reaction to housing. But to provide balance, we're getting the university's point of view. But the thing is, though, because this is the theme of the story, the university's reaction is important to the story, but it's not nearly as important as what the students have to say. So we're thinking inverted pyramid here. We put toward the bottom of the story university reaction to student reaction. Okay. So if people care enough, they'll actually read down to the bottom to see how the university feels about it. Okay. But it's again, the inverted pyramid is largely that so that you can stay focused on how students feel about a certain story and then you get to the bottom and essentially you get to the bottom and then you can maybe it might be like if you're interested enough in the story you might think to yourself, well, I like to hear what the university has to say because they're making a lot of accusations or thoughts here, or especially a lot of thoughts here. Or maybe they're saying things are too good, so it's important that the university has something to say about it. So maybe is the university actually like doing something to build on what's good is happening in university? So what the students are saying. So anyway, so that's something that usually, like I said, goes toward the bottom of the story. So it's actually kind of a test to make sure that we go back to the beginning of the semester, you understand the importance of an inverted pyramid, that we put the important stuff at the top, which is what the students have to say, maybe up to as many as 6 transitions, okay, and anecdotes, and then maybe quotes. And then you get the university reaction to the students' reaction toward the bottom, okay? And that provides a balanced story. It provides it gives people the opportunity to kind of like weigh, what the students have to say against what the university has to say and make their own opinions on things. Okay. I mean, if the university provides an opinion that it doesn't really say much, then you know what that does? That actually gives like credibility to what the students have to say. You know, it makes you feel like what are they kind of hiding here? Why are they not taking enough time to actually really kind of react to what people are having to say? That sort of thing. So it's not, it's again, it's typically done in like all sorts of stories. Okay. I mean, I could call up the New York Times right now. All right. Supreme Court expands Trump's power over immigration. So what you see is in a pair of sharply divided decisions, the Supreme Court allowed President Trump's aggressive crackdown on immigration to move forward. taken together. Basically, it goes into some kind of like explanation of what happened. It talks about the ruling, this sort of thing here, and what it's about, what he's pushed for. So it's all about the ruling and what it means. The court's 6-3 decision. In immigration communities throughout the country, the ruling brought fear and uncertainty. So this may be where we're like, it's not really down too low, but basically it's not like at the top either. You start to see a little bit of like, okay, how does the other side feel? It's going to talk more about essentially like how the Supreme Court feels about things, okay, and what it's about, okay. But then, you know, and actually it doesn't really, I mean, even though it alludes to it early on, um, it does, it actually doesn't really get to like how the immigration advocates feel about it until until really later on in the story, okay. That also provides some sort of impact and shows like kind of what of impact of what the people are saying or what they're doing or what the Supreme Court is saying and what they're doing. Okay. Um, so the story is about the ruling, but the reaction to it comes later. Okay. It's important to the story because it's for those people who might have enough interest in it to actually know what or want to know what happened. But at the same time, gives a person who maybe is maybe mildly interested in an interest just essentially the bare essentials at the beginning and gives them an idea of like what the story is going to be about, and then they have the opportunity to leave. All right, so going back to this assignment right here, there's no rewrite in this story, so it's another test for you guys, and that is sometimes actually stories are done ahead of time. There's not enough time to actually, usually like a lot of times it's done in a week. There's not a lot of time to actually like work on the story on the back end of things. So actually, you know, the story is actually something that is actually like worked, like I said, worked on ahead of time. So that by the time it's actually finished and done and ready to send to whatever printer or website and where it needs to be posted, all the editing is done on the front end. And like I said, that's usually done like a project oriented story. So I want to give you the feeling of what it's like, not just working on a story that essentially is like where you just do it and you wait for like the reaction and that's it. And it's almost like how a breaking news story would be handled. But how do you work on a story that's typically done where a lot of that work is done ahead of time, and that's essentially what a project oriented story is done. Okay. All right. So what that is actually the new assignment, and it's the major assignment. It's the last assignment, and it counts 4 times as much, like I said, as much. So it's actually almost half of your writing grade. It's about 35%, I believe. So that's a lot. Okay. So this is going to be a story where you really need to like actually I wasn't really like I have to say I was a little bit disappointed in like a lot of the people not I don't feel like enough people actually reached out to me and basically trying to find out if the megalomania story like what the lead was, how what direction should be going, sort of that sort of thing. This one's really going to almost like kind of demand that you do that because like I said there's no editing on the back end, it's all done on the front end. Okay, so this is like a test in making sure that you're able to do things not just at the last minute, but make sure you get, because this is also a test to make sure you understand that reporting is actually something that has to really get started like right away. And actually, let me go back to actually what I have here. I actually give you even the question that is here because that's always a question I get, and that is, how do you feel about the housing situation at Rutgers and is the university doing anything to improve it? That is the question you need to ask Danielle Delp, and then basically come back with the reaction that you get, and you insert that into the story. um, I'm going to warn you right now, by the way, Danielle Delp's going to release essentially a statement of reaction, and it's going to be no comment after that. Okay. So you could try to get maybe more information, but you're not going to get it. So basically, but it's important for you to reach out and get that information. Okay. All right. And I gave you the email address for doing so. It's right here. Okay. So yeah, so that's our major assignment. And like I said, I kind of again combines a lot of the elements that we've talked about in this semester and brings it into essentially one story. And that is like getting information, working on developing a story that's like very readable and engaging from top to bottom, has like depth and anecdotes and that sort of thing, but also demands that you work ahead of time, get on top of things right ahead, right, as soon as it's assigned. And at the same time, it also um, requires you to actually go beyond what's like given to you and actually get like, some balanced reaction to the story. All right. All right, so actually that is really it. So I will talk a little bit more about this story, and I assume probably be getting some questions about it on Monday's lecture. Actually, I only have like two more lectures to go. It's Monday, and then I'll be providing you another lecture on July 3rd. Okay, which again I know is a day off for a lot of people, but anyway, that will be the last lecture. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks very much, and let's stay in touch and talk about this assignment. Okay. Thanks.